What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael, setting the scene for an Orange Out matchup between Colorado State and San Diego State this weekend. Really important for the Rams. You don't want to have a little tumble here after starting so hot in the first half of the Mountain West slate. Most certainly got, I wouldn't say throttled by New Mexico. The final score, I suppose, would say that would be a fair assessment, but that game got away from them in Albuquerque. Disappointing finish, not an unexpected result, all things considered. Having said that, even coming off of that game, I still have a lot of confidence in this team. Still feel like this one against San Diego State is going to be a tough matchup, but a winnable game for CSU, especially in Moby Arena. We're going to talk about the series history a little bit. I'm going to talk about my affinity for the Orange Out games in particular, some of my favorite memories as a student. Even before I got to CSU, I think back to like the 2012, 2013 days under Tim Miles and some of the big moments that happened there. The first Harlem Shake, if you're old enough to remember that kind of stuff in Moby. We'll give an updated Mountain West power ranking, a lot to talk about, a little bit of movement after some of the results. And then we're going to talk CSU football and the transfer additions that have joined the program ahead of the spring. I'll answer any questions, comments, concerns that anybody might have on the state of the roster. Throw out some positions that could potentially be areas of need, at least areas where they could afford to bolster the depth a little bit going into the fall. Important to remember that you're going to have some opportunities to add more players ahead of the start of fall camp after the spring semester here. Shout out to my guy, Aaron Harris, in the Toyota chat. Let's make it to the freaking weekend, baby. I'm with you. Hopefully this will be a nice little distraction on a Friday morning for you before we can get to what should be a pretty fun weekend. Before we kind of get into all of the men's hoop stuff, I did just briefly want to set the scene for an important road game for CSU women's basketball as well. The Rams currently tied with Wyoming for second place in the Mountain West, although CSU does hold that tiebreaker at the moment with the win in Laramie. CSU and Wyoming both 7-3 in the conference standings, both trailing UNLV by a couple of games as of now, with 8 games remaining in the schedule for the women's team and a couple of games to make up. Likely going to have to win out outside of some weird stuff happening with UNLV and them totally falling apart. But that's where that loss to Air Force really hurts last weekend because it puts you multiple games behind the Rebels. You still have an opportunity to play them at home, potentially make up some of that ground. But even if you won that game, assuming that UNLV does not lose any other matchups, you would still be behind the Rebels in the standings. I'm with you in the chat. The Wyoming is known as the Fighting Ferdigs this year. It's felt like that's been the case for 2 or 3 years now. A couple of pretty fun matchups between those teams, both in the regular season and in the Mountain West tournament. It feels like they've been matched up quite often the last 3-4 years. She's a beast, and Ferdig is tough to handle down low in the post. She's pretty much a walking double-double at this stage of his career, or her career, excuse me. I feel like the Rams are more skilled. I feel like this team is well-rounded enough to win the league, and they've got the scoring. They've got youngsters that are popping, which is encouraging. But ultimately, my faith in this team largely comes down to we've got Emma Ronsick and you guys don't. But I just feel like the inconsistency has been a little bit frustrating at times, and especially going back to that Air Force game over the weekend, it just feels like that could be the one you look back on at the end of the year and just feel like, man, that really got away from us. But I do feel like it's a pretty good matchup for CSU against Boise State on the road this weekend. They've got a lot of favorable games coming up outside of UNLV and Wyoming. I would say CSU should be pretty significant favorites in the other 6 games, and even against Wyoming and Fertig, Emma Ronsick does match up really well against Fertig. She can just spread the floor, which, Fertig, she wants to be more down low by the hoop, with Ronsick being able to come out near the top of the key and just move around and stuff. I think she can wear her out. And I think it's a tough defensive draw for anybody, but especially for a player stylistically like Fertig, who inherently wants to play down low and just isn't really a modern forward like Ronsick is. We also got Semental, as Harris brings up, who might be the best 3-point shooter on either team. That's what I'm saying. The construct of this team is very solid. They're encouraging. They've got talent. They've just been all over the place in terms of playing to the level of their competition, which to me, that kind of falls on coaching. But we'll see. I was impressed with what they were able to do against New Mexico the other night, another late night matchup. I think the response from this group, that was great, especially coming off of such a disheartening result against Air Force. But they've got to be able to win this one if they want to have an opportunity. All right, let's get into the men's side of things. Let's talk about this Orange Out. Let's talk about the history. First things first. San Diego State leads 53-44 all time, but the Rams are 28-15 against San Diego State at Moby, so they've had a lot of success in their own building. In particular, CSU has been quite good against San Diego State in these Orange Out games. 4 of CSU's last 5 wins at home, so that's not including the 2017 win in Viejas, where Gian Clavel went for 37, or the 2017 Mountain West tournament win, where the Rams came back from double digits. CSU actually came back from double digits all 3 times that year to sweep San Diego State, one of the more impressive runs that I can remember from this program. But 4 of the last 5 home wins over San Diego State have been in the Orange Out. CSU basically always does some type of theme game for San Diego State, which is, a testament to the respect that we have for them as a program. Like, they are the face of the league. They are the standard that everybody measures up against. Wins against San Diego State, they mean a little bit more. I've talked about that a lot over the years. Wins over Boise State in football, wins over San Diego State hoops. They just carry a little bit more weight. They garner a little bit more respect. And naturally, they tend to create pretty awesome in-game atmosphere. So I'm really excited for this Orange Out on Saturday. Some of my favorite moments all time have been in the Orange Out. I think back to 2013, the Rams number 24. CSU was like their first win as a ranked team in almost 60 years. Dorian Green goes for 6 straight points over the final minute. They pull it out 66-60. Huge moment for CSU in an NCAA tournament year. 2015, that was actually the only one that wasn't an Orange Out. That was a whiteout. Daniel Bejarano had a great game. CSU wins 79-73. We talked about 2017 and how fun that was. Emmanuel Amagbo hit that game winner. Honestly, one of the most emotional moments I've ever been a part of in terms of my media career, and it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I won't do the whole story again, but for those of you that maybe don't remember, or if you followed the team back then, I'm sure you remember, but for those of you that maybe aren't aware, or you're younger, maybe you're a student listening, Emmanuel Amagbo, before the season, tragically lost his entire family in a house fire. It was really a horrific scenario. I wondered if he would come back that year. He ultimately decided to. Had a really great season and had a couple of huge moments, but he hits a game winner, hits a 3. Nobody expects it from E, more of a post player, although he could stretch the floor a little bit. Immediately just drops to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He's in the hallway, just completely an emotional wreck. Talking about it post game, he talked about how he felt like his family was with him that night and that it was, all for them. It was really cool. And honestly, like, as a student journalist, I probably wasn't ready for that type of story, that type of emotion, meaning on that night. Like, I'm more thinking basketball terms, but it was one of those perfect examples of how sports mean a whole lot more than just a bunch of stats, a bunch of results. Yeah, Swollen, the Twitter chat brings up the Octia stunk. There've just been so many great moments in these Orange Outs, including, the most recent win over San Diego State, 2022. CSU wins behind a big night from David Roddy. Roddy hits the game-winning shot. He goes for like 22 in the game. James Moores gets the crucial block on the other end. All of San Diego State is losing their minds, so much so that the opposing beat writer actually stormed into our press conference and basically tried to goad Medved into saying it should have been a foul or like San Diego State deserved to win. It was wild behavior. I've never really seen anything like it. I think about it basically every time we play San Diego State now. But these games mean a lot. And I think the atmospheres in these Orange Outs really show like how big this game has become every year. It's certainly one of the games that I look forward to every year. It's some of my favorite memories, and it's created some all-time great moments. I've got multiple photos from over the years of the students storming the floor like they did in 2022, like they did in 2017. As Steve Ivey says in the Toyota chat, the photo of Amagbo post-game is the greatest CSU basketball photo ever. I'm with him. Just Google it, Emmanuel Amagbo, San Diego State Orange Out 2017. It's really powerful stuff. And my incredibly talented colleague at the time, Abby Parr, took some amazing photos that night. She's gone on to do incredible things. CSU alum that shoots the biggest sporting events in the world today, the Olympics, NFL games, NBA, you name it. If it's a big moment, she's there shooting. And that was one of her first ones that really resonated with me. And it was a night I will never forget. We are going to continue talking about this matchup with San Diego State. I went on about the history a little bit longer than I intended to. Sometimes I wax poetically. I'm a romantic when it comes to the history and the tradition, and especially emotional moments like that. But I do want to talk about kind of what some of the keys will be for CSU in this challenging matchup against a highly athletic San Diego State team that has been admittedly a little bit erratic in terms of their performance of late. Really feel like they've been playing with their food. Frankly, got away with a couple of different results where they should have lost to lesser competition, ended up stealing one in Colorado Springs against Air Force that they had no business winning. San Jose State had them on the ropes, let it fall through their fingers. Wyoming had them the other night, and they have been able to escape by the hair on their chinny chin there, but maybe they're due. Maybe this weekend is when that all kind of catches up to them. But we got to pay the bills, guys. We got to keep this going. And I am going to shout out a couple of our partners, starting with Mando. You like what I did there? That's called a stall while the ads pull up. Wasn't loading for me. But Mando, they're awesome. For moments like this, when the ads are not pulling up and I'm sweating, I'm live, I'm panicking. What am I going to do? Got to get this read in. I'm good if I got my Mando on. What's awesome about Mando is it's an effective way to keep you smelling fresh from head to toe. We're not just talking your armpits. Mando is full body deodorant, and they've got a whole bunch of different stuff. You know, they've got lotions. They've got obviously the traditional just stick deodorant that, you know, you're used to there. But what you can do with the Mando products that you can't do with other deodorants, I'm not going to name names there. You can put it on your butt crack. You can put it on your balls, on your grundle, which is a term that I didn't even know before we started doing this. What's awesome is it's going to last. It's scientifically proven to fight BO better. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and treated. They've got a bunch of different awesome smells like Mount Fuji and, you know, all the manly stuff. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like the mini body wash or deodorant wipes. Pretty cool. Ever heard of that before? On top of that, you're going to get free shipping. Plus, with the special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use the code DNVR at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. I also want to talk about Coors Light, who wants you to choose chill. Here's the thing, guys. You guys are killing me in the Toyota chat. I'm going to choose chill. I'm going to ignore your comments, and I'm going to get this ad read in. You know, there's a lot to balance in life between work, between stresses of just being an adult. They're putting fiber optic in my backyard over the last couple of days. My dog obviously has not handled that very well. He's not a fan of anybody being around the house. Can let it ruin the day. Can let it be frustrating, can be an unchill guy, but I don't want that. I want to choose a chill mindset. Then when I get through this day, I'm going to kick back, and crack open an ice cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, cold as the Rockies, Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. When you embrace the chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Crisp and refreshing as the Rockies. Choose chill this winter, then reach for a Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door by visiting CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Yeah, we got in the Toyota chat. I've already mispronounced Fertig's gender or gotten it wrong, I guess, and I've mentioned the term girdle. We are off the rails. We have fun. It's a Friday episode. We're keeping it light. I'm generally pretty optimistic going into this matchup with San Diego State. I mean, obviously, they've got talent. They're still exactly what you expect them to be defensively. Year after year, it feels like they change stars, they change starters, and they always have that defensive mentality. They're top 10 in defensive efficiency on KenPom. I believe they're 9th last I checked. Offensively, they've been kind of all over the place. They definitely don't have the same type of scoring that they've had in years past, particularly at the guards. I like Miles Byrd a lot. He's really talented. He's one of the better three-point shooters in the league, but he's not a guy that tends to, especially like in a half-court setting, like if they're struggling offensively and they're not hitting threes, he's not really a guy that's going to put the ball on the floor and create a high percentage mid-range look or drive on you and get fouled and create points that way. He's really athletic. I think he could do that in his game. It's just not really what he plays. It's a lot of pulling up from deep. He's great defensively. I mean, we remember that from the first matchup. He had 7 steals, 25 points. I think about 10 of those points came off of plays where he's able to pick somebody's pocket and then go uncontested for a dunk. I mean, he is a freak athlete. And he's the kind of guy that can beat you by himself. And I will say, as confident as I am, or as optimistic as I am, I should say, going into this game from CSU standpoint at home, looking at the last couple of nights, Bird's been a little bit off. He's had some turnovers, 3 straight games with 3 turnovers. He hasn't shot the ball as well. Kind of feels like he's due. That makes me a little bit worried. In a different world, he would have been a CSU Ram, as Mitch points out in the Toyota chat. The Rams went after him hard. I believe the same cycle, it was him and Micah Parrish, the transfer that ended up on their national championship team. CSU went hard after both of those guys, got outbid, and they ultimately ended up in San Diego State. But yes, there was a world in which Miles Byrd would have been a CSU Ram. And could you imagine the athleticism of that team if he joins the roster and you've got David Roddy and Isaiah, and then you bring in Neat Clifford? Like, one could only dream of what that could have been. But he's a guy that you've got to keep contained. You know, we faced a lot of stars this year. Donovan Dent is the type of player that can beat you single-handedly. He doesn't have to. And New Mexico's depth was on display, and they're getting key contribution outside of the guys you anticipated. Like, you knew Nelly Jr. Joseph, he's a walking double-double. You knew that Donovan Dent, one of the best scorers and facilitators in the league, great defender. You know they're going to do their thing. Not exactly expecting CJ Nolan to drop 20 on you. I mean, their depth is unreal. San Diego State, I don't know if they have the depth that they typically do. They've got some really good players. Like Nick Boyd is a guard that you don't want to sleep on, and he's a good scorer. He can create for others. Like, they've got guys, but it's not Malachi Flynn back there, you know, dropping 30 on you most nights. I think as far as like athleticism goes, this is the closest that CSU has ever been to San Diego State. Like, it feels like most years, the gap between them and everybody else, at least in terms of athleticism, not always skill, but just size, big athletic dudes, is pretty stark. And I don't really feel like that's the case. Miles Byrd is a freak, him aside. It's not a roster that terrifies you. Like, this is a really good team. They play physical defense. They're going to hound you. If you turn the ball over a ton and you give them those easy layups the other way where they don't have to set up in their half-court offense and execute, then they can run you out of your own building for sure, and they can beat up on you. They're not going to most nights at least. Sometimes you get hot shooting the ball, but most nights they're not necessarily, I don't think, going to bury you with like a 20-0 run the same way you'll get from New Mexico or Utah State, just because they're not quite as potent offensively, but they're a step up defensively from those teams. And they do a good job of hanging around, despite the fact that their offense is pretty hot and cold this year. Really, everybody's made them work pretty consistently now. With what CSU has done defensively for much of the year, and again, I know that New Mexico game got away from you, but that doesn't really change my opinion a whole lot of what I think this team is, which is right there in the mix. In all likelihood, your chances of winning a regular season conference title probably went out the window. It's not impossible, but you just need a lot of help. You would need New Mexico to totally collapse. You would probably need to sweep Utah State just to help yourself from that tiebreaker standpoint, given that you lose the tiebreaker against New Mexico. But can you finish top 3? You put yourself in this spot for a while now. It's been pretty consistent basketball over the last month, outside of 10 minutes in Albuquerque and really most of the second half, I guess, in Viejas. That wasn't your prettiest game. You've got to play better against San Diego State the second time around than you did in the first one. You certainly need more from the bench than you got in that game. I think it was 2 total bench points against San Diego State in that first matchup. That's just not going to get it done against a team like that, unless, you have the 2017 Gian Clavel scenario where he goes for 37, maybe the best individual college basketball performance I've ever seen. I wish I could watch that game in its entirety. You can find some of the highlights, including his game-winning circus layup and some of the deep threes that he hit. Gian would hit these step-back threes where there'd be 2 guys coming up on him, and I'm just going to create a little bit of space here and shoot it from 5 feet behind the arc. Everybody in the world's going, no, 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 no. And he would cash him. And it just got to a point where you expected him to make those terrible circus shots. And that night was absurd. If you get a performance like that from like Nick Clifford or Jalen Lake, then you could probably win with only 2 bench points. But we saw, I think 4 of the 5 starters were in double-digit figures in that first matchup against San Diego State. It just wasn't enough consistent scoring across the board, especially given it was a night where Miles Byrd got hot. He dropped 25, created havoc defensively. The Rams had way too many turnovers in that game. It was a lot like the New Mexico matchup in a sense where the turnovers were catastrophic. Like, not only are you giving the possession away and are you losing a chance to put points on the board, but you're doing it at the most inopportune times. It's resulting in a 2-on-1 the other way, or an uncontested, fast break dunk. Not all turnovers are equal. It's kind of like, some interceptions kill you. You give up a pick 6. That's pretty brutal. Some interceptions don't prove to be that big of a deal in the end, and they just had far too many pick 6s in that matchup. They've got to be able to limit it. It was an issue. They are a team that will capitalize on your mistakes, much like what we saw from UNM, who I think had 17 points off of CSU's 11 turnovers. You can't have those, especially the steals where like Miles Byrd's just picking your pocket at midcourt and going the other way. Now, we've seen Kyan Evans play great ball of late. He was pretty encouraging in that San Diego State game, all things considered. Had a couple of bad turnovers, as did Neek, as did Lake. Everybody's got to be better than they were in that matchup. But he shot the ball well. It was a lot like the other night, a lot like Reno. He seems to really embrace those hostile settings, and you love that he's up for that moment. But coming off of a night in which we saw a really high ceiling, we saw exactly what was envisioned when you signed him. You saw, why the staff believed in him with the way that he's shooting the ball, with the way that he's creating for others. But you also saw a guy who's a sophomore and has a lot of room to grow. Like, he cannot pick up that 3rd and 4th foul in the second half the way that he did. I like that he's aggressive. I like that he's not playing timid out there, but it's just one of those that really burns you. And obviously they couldn't afford to lose him. You cannot get in foul trouble against a team like San Diego State because they'll just force the issue on you. When they sense blood in the water, man, they're going to hound you defensively. Now all of a sudden they're going to try and drive on you and put your bigs in a tough spot. And, we don't have like a true rim protector, guys, that's going to shut down. I think you need a good game from Ethan Morton in this matchup. I know that at times he's tough to watch on the offensive end. Like, when he drives into the lane and has no intention of even trying to go to the hoop, comes to a complete stop, does like a 180, and is immediately looking to dish the ball out to anybody. It drives me insane because it's bad for the spacing. It's bad for the flow of the offense. You are playing 4-on-5. He's had some moments, there have been times he's shown maybe he'll put the ball on the floor, drive baseline, attack the rim there. I like that he's at least taking the open shots now, even if he's not hitting them. His impact defensively, though, is huge. Like, nobody guarded Dent as well as he did the other night. Nobody was able to handle Ethan Taylor of Air Force the way that he was. And I do wonder if you deploy him at times on Miles Bird as kind of an equalizer. Could also potentially help you keep guys like Neek out of foul trouble, who can then help, Cayenne hedge on some of these guys like I almost said True Washington, New Mexico's point guard, but Nick Boyd, excuse me. That's a really good question in the Toyota chat. Where does Ethan Morton fall on a list of most divisive basketball players this century? He's up there because he's like a classic example of you see exactly what both sides are saying. Like, especially given that, we can get a look behind the scenes and talk to coaches and all of that kind of stuff. Like, you understand why the coaches like him. He's a great teammate. He's a very vocal leader in that locker room. Like, Neek is the leader of the team. But he's played a lot of big time basketball. I mean, he was a starter for Purdue 2 years ago. Like, you don't earn time on the floor there if you don't have some moxie to you. And he's got this presence to him that I think, especially for younger guys, is good to be around. This whole team, really, they're locked in. It's all about basketball. But I think his presence is big at the top. He's their best one-on-one defender. He is an impactful rebounder. He's probably the second best passer on the team as well. I think when it comes to offense, I don't want to speak for him. I'd like to speak about it with him on record sometime. It's been kind of a sensitive subject. I haven't really glanced at it. Admittedly, I should ask him about it. I've talked to the coaches about it, but it almost comes off like the yips to me. Like, I just think his confidence was so broken between losing his role at Purdue, and then obviously he came in early and really struggled offensively, and I think just a couple of bad performances compounded, and you could see the emotion on his face. He is a tough evaluation because it's tough to win consistently if you're playing 4-on-5 offensively without somebody really making up the slack. Like, you need somebody like Neek to really be on. And when he has a game like he had the other night, it's tough to be able to live with playing 4-on-5 offensively, even if you do have a major impact defensively. I also don't know if they have enough quality defenders, especially for matchups like this, to completely just, have him out of the mix. Like, he is the best defender on the team. As much as I love what Bowen Bourne has been bringing to the table, he's kind of a defensive liability, as is Keshawn Williams. Jorgensen and Japa are going to be in a different part of the floor for the most part, but neither of them are lockdown defenders. Like, he's really the only guy you have in the rotation that can make an impact for you. And when you aren't an overtly dominant defense from the get-go, I just think you need that value. I think what he brings on the defensive side offsets as much of a liability he is at times offensively. And I think the defensive efficiency numbers that CSU has had in league play is kind of proof of that. Again, like, I get why he's frustrating. It makes me cringe when I see him go into the lane and have just no intention of trying to even just draw a foul. And he's shooting the free throws a little bit better of late. Maybe that'll change now that he's having more success at the line. But I do think that he's a guy that in this type of matchup could really prove his value by locking, whether it's Boyd, or to me, it makes more sense to put him on Bird just because of the length. And assuming he has the quickness to stay with him, that would be my only question. But I think you need him in this type of game because these type of games are going to be tough for Bowen Bourne or Keshawn Williams to make a major impact. Maybe they can stretch the floor for you a little bit, knock down some threes. That'd be huge. I don't know, though. To me, it feels like a game where whether it's him and then Jorgensen, or maybe you get a little bit of Japa run. He is another divisive player right now. I understand why people like him. He brings a little bit of passion. He brings a little bit of attitude to the table. He's obviously got good size and athleticism. He also has no idea what he's doing defensively at the moment. And he's the only guy I've seen in consecutive games pick up 3 fouls in a 3-minute stretch in back-to-back matchups. But I know they're going to need more from the rotation than they got in that first matchup. And I just feel like if anybody is going to be the guy that can step up and make an impact for you, my gut says it would be Ethan Morton defensively, and then maybe somebody like Bowen Bourne getting hot from 3 and making some shots for you there. I think you got to establish a presence in the paint. They're so physical with you that it becomes easy to settle for outside jump shots. They'll give you those shots. And CSU, although the numbers have been pretty good, they are a streaky team. I would prefer to see CSU establish the presence in the paint and then establish success off of that from the perimeter. I think if you come out and you knock down a bunch of threes over the first 5 minutes, that can be a blessing and a curse, because I just think it can lead to the wrong mentality. And I think one of the most important things for CSU in this matchup is going to be not to get punked physically. You've got to punch right back. And on top of avoiding foul trouble yourself defensively, you kind of got to force the issue and get San Diego State in foul trouble as well. Make them play some of their bench guys who are not as consistent as their starters. And if you do that, I think you've got a really good opportunity to win this game. Yeah, we're going to get into the Mountain West Power Ranking. Then we're going to move on and talk football. Real quick, I do want to shout out a couple more partners, though. We're going to talk about Game Time, who's making it easier than ever to get tickets to all your favorite events. I'm talking sports, stand-up comedy, theater, you name it, they've got it. What's awesome about Game Time and their Game Time Picks curation feature, it shows you the best of the best. You don't have to waste your time sorting through thousands of tickets. Game Time has an incredible assortment. They've got so many deals, but it's so many tickets that they offer. It can almost be at times a little bit overwhelming, but not with Game Time Picks. You just get on there, boom, you're going to see the best value, the best bang for your buck. And that's really what Game Time is all about, making it easier, making it more affordable, making it more convenient. You're not going to get hit with 10 million last-minute fees like the other places. The price you see, that's the price that you pay. They've got the most flexible ticket coverage insurance process. And with the Game Time guarantee, if you can find tickets in the same section, same row for less, they'll credit you up to 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Did you know you can watch this ugly mug of mine on TV now? DNVR Sports live on TV. In addition to streaming on YouTube, listening via Spotify, Apple, as you always have been able to, we are now streaming on Samsung TV, channel 2348. You can watch us on Xfinity, channel 4072. Not only can you watch Altitude now, you can watch the DNVR Rams podcast. We're on Xumo Play. More platforms to come soon. All you got to do is, if you've got a microphone function on your remote, say DNVR into it. Boom, it's going to take you right there. You can just type it old school as well. If you are watching on TV, snap a picture of it, send it to inthewild@thednvr.com. That's in the wild, all one word, at thednvr.com. We'll feature some submissions live on the show and pick lucky winners for some free DNVR merch. You know, we've got way more than shirts these days. We've got hats, got glasses, coffee mugs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out. Shout out to everybody rocking with us this morning. I appreciate it. It's been a lively Toyota chat, which always makes it way more fun for me. Makes it feel a little less like I'm just talking into the mirror in the morning. Mile High Minute wants to know, what are the keys for the Rams to pull off the next 2 wins? Simply, the stars need to shine brighter, I think, is the biggest factor to win these type of games against San Diego State, against Utah State, especially, you know, going out on the road after this. You need your best players to ball out. You know, Cayenne was great outside of, you know, the foul trouble. Bemba, 17 points in the paint against a physical New Mexico team. I'd love to see that again. Each of these 2 matchups, I think establishing that presence in the post is going to be important. They've just got to hit shots too. Like, I don't feel like the offense as a whole looked awful in that New Mexico game. I felt like the looks that they got for the most part were quality. I mean, every game there's a couple that I can nitpick. They just weren't making them. And when, you know, Neek and Lake go like 1 of 13 from 3-point, this team doesn't really have the depth around them to withstand that. And so to me, you need more consistency establish that presence in the paint, but shot making is kind of what it's going to come down to, because I think CSU has more or less been fairly locked in defensively. Hasn't been a huge issue. Got a little sloppy at times late in that game once it got away from them, but they're winnable games. They are winnable games. All right, let's get into the Mountain West Power Ranking. Taylor says, going to the Houston CU game tomorrow before the CSU game. Excited to see a top 10 turnover defense versus a bottom 10 turnover offense. That game in Boulder might get ugly. You look at that CU schedule, and I'm not even doing this to take shots as a CSU guy. I'm not sure where the win is. They might go over in the Big 12 slate. It's been a rough reintroduction to the best conference in the country for them. So I'm not trying to throw shade and act like, CSU would be dominating in the Big 12. It's a brutal league, but it does make you feel frustrated as a CSU supporter about how poorly CSU showed up in Boulder that night. Really the last 3 times in Boulder, it's been pretty disheartening. But go Cougs, pull it off. It'd be a good day if we could see Houston win nice and early, and then cap it off with a late night Orange Out win in Moby. That's a good ass day. Tough to beat that. Let's get into the Mountain West Power Ranking, and then we'll talk CSU football, recruiting, hit on the additions. We've talked about basically all these guys individually at various points, but just kind of wanted to give you a synopsis of who they actually signed, who's going to be here for spring ball. Kevin Lytle wrote about this recently as well, so he and we always tend to be on the same wavelength when it comes to off-season content, so I'm not surprised about that, but I was like, damn it, he beat me. Shout out to them. Subscribe to the Coloradoan, some of the best local journalism in the state. All right, Mountain West Power Ranking. Starting at the bottom, working our way to the top. This is something that I used to spend way too much time on, so we're just going to kind of fly through it a little bit faster. Air Force at the bottom, winless in Mountain West play. What else do you say? Fresno State right above them, a little bit friskier. They've lost some games, though, that have frustrated me. I will say, though, they're kind of out of those bottom teams. They're not a group I think you would want to draw day one in Vegas in the Mountain West tournament. Like you could find a reason not to want to play any of these teams, like Air Force and Ethan Taylor, and their potential for a red hot shooting day. That's a little wonky. Wyoming and Agbeam, like he can get going. He's a guy that can score 30 on you, plus the element of a rivalry game. Like really, you don't want to play anyone 3 times. You're gonna have to play someone 3 times because it's an even schedule now. It used to be easier to make those talking points when there were 2 teams in the league that you only played once. Hopefully we draw them and only have to play them a second time in the tournament. It's not a factor anymore. I have UNLV at 9. I think you can make an argument they could be as low as 11. If Air Force wins a game and Fresno wins a game, I might put UNLV at 11 next week purely out of principle. They piss me off. They've got Dean Thomas Jr. He's a stud. Nobody does less with more athletes than UNLV basketball. And I would be shocked if Kruger is back next year. 5 losses in a row for the Rebels after a little flash in the pan there when they beat San Diego State and Utah State. I still think they'll probably pull off another big win this year because that's just how freaking stupid that program is. They're a pain in the ass for the Mountain West, and maybe in some ways I'm okay if they don't come to the Pac-12 just because I'm tired of having to watch that basketball program underperform, and then they win 2 games and their fans puff their chests like it's 1990 and you've got Tark on the sideline or something like that. It's a very unserious group of fans, if we're being honest. Wyoming, they're coming in at number 8. Frisky. Agby missed the last game and they still were competitive, which is an encouraging sign for them moving forward. They're a team I really don't think CSU is going to want to pull for a 3rd time. San Jose State, I'm putting them above. 2-game winning streak. They've got multiple guys that can score. They had 2 30-point scores the other night. They're giving everybody a game. Shout out Tim Miles. Can we get Tim Miles the hell out of San Jose, please, this offseason? Somebody hire that man. Nobody does more with less. That's who UNLV should hire. Talk about, doing less with more versus doing more with less. Go get Tim Miles. Find somebody who actually develops talent and takes advantage of the people that he has in his building, puts his players in a position to succeed, he'll change everything he does stylistically from year to year to fit his talent. It's just a really good coach. I have Nevada at 6 because they've won 2 in a row, and I think their talent is the highest of anybody out of the bottom half of the league. Out of principle, a lot like UNLV, I don't respect that program right now. I think they're going to be really annoying. They're probably going to be a thorn in the side, potentially cost somebody a bid to the tournament because they do have that talent. And then you're going to look up at the end of the year and they're going to be like just above 500, and it doesn't make any sense. Alford, is he still a good coach? I don't know. Boise State at 5, the biggest disappointment of the league, I would say this year. I still think they could get hot under the right circumstances. I love Cardenas. I love Degenhart. They've had a couple of guys that haven't quite lived up to what I thought they would be. I don't know what the deal is with Stanley this season, but they've struggled against the other top teams. And I think 5 is fair based on where they've been. I did drop CSU from 3 to 4 this week. I jumped them with San Diego State. Some of that is a little bit of bulletin board material for the Rams. Let's fire them up. I said you're 4th. Do something about it, because clearly they care about these power rankings. No, I just think that what San Diego State brings to the table defensively plus Bird, I think they're a little bit scarier. You know, if you polled coaches across the country, I think you would probably rather play CSU than San Diego State. I did give them the head-to-head, but I more or less have them on even footing right now, and whoever wins this game this weekend is going to claim that 3rd spot. We have Utah State at 2 and New Mexico at 1. I don't really think you can make any argument for anything else. New Mexico throttled Utah State in Logan. They are the hottest team in the league right now. I hope they keep it up, just because I think it would be fun to see them go on a run on the tournament. They're the type of team that, you know, Donovan Dent gets it going, and True Washington, like they could definitely be a March Madness darling, winning one of those random afternoon games at 2 p.m. or something like that. I love the NCAA tournament so much. I cannot wait. I can't wait for the Mountain West tournament either. All right. You need to get that top 5 finish, as Taylor says in the Toyota chat. Getting a 3 seed would be big. Yeah, to me, that's like the goal at this point. Sure, it would be awesome to win the league. You're going to need a lot of help for that to happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're going to need a lot for that to happen. Can you keep the spot you've established right now and take care of business, beat the teams you're supposed to beat, win at home, maybe steal one on the road against like a UNLV, for instance, and you'll be in a really good spot to finish top 3. If you win your home games, steal 1, maybe 2 more on the road, but even 1, I think, based on what you've already done. If you also win your home games, I would be willing to bet that they finish 3rd in the league. And that's a pretty favorable draw, you know, going into Vegas, where you just got to get hot for 3 days, and anything is possible. Certainly with this team, they defend well enough, which is going to be what I think gives them an opportunity against anybody, because defense carries, you know, teams that live and die by 3-point shooting. Like, if you just don't have it that night, you're dead in the water. The Rams can muck things up and hang around, but they certainly need better scoring than what they got the other night. All right, let's transition over to football. I guess at this point, I might as well just save some of the talking points I have, and we can do a full other podcast on it. I did not anticipate I would do 45 minutes of hoops, but hey, people get me going. We're talking about the Mountain West. This is my shit, guys. So I'm into it. All right, we're going to rapid fire here just through the additions that are going to be here for spring. If you've got any questions, comments, anything you want me to respond to, firemen, we'll get them at the end here. I'm going to start with the wide receivers, which I think is the most intriguing group that they've added talent. Everybody knows that LB is back. Lewis Brown the fourth. Transfers over from San Diego State. You also bring over Kojo Antwi, fresh off of winning a national championship at Ohio State. And Tay Lanier, who is not, he's not the highlight name of this group. He's not going to jump off the page. He's a guy a couple years ago when he committed from New Mexico was really exciting to me. Had some academic stuff. I don't think he ended up qualifying, so he went to Northern Arizona instead. Been really productive the last couple years. I think he's got the length and athleticism to come in and kind of fill the Jamari Person type role. that you lost with him going to Liberty. LB, to me, he's going to be your number one receiver. I just think his ceiling is really high. I'm really excited about Jordan Ross in year 2. And, you're hoping Dylan Goffney can get it going. He's still on the spring roster, which is at least encouraging. Armani Winfield is a freak athlete. He's got a high ceiling. If he can find some consistency, refine his route running a little bit, work on the drops. And then, Kojo Antwi, he wasn't the guy at Ohio State. Ohio State has arguably had the deepest wide receiver room in the country now for 5 years or so. I mean, Bama's had some really good groups in there as well. But former 4-star prospect, he can really run, gives you experience, comes from a program, obviously, where you have to do the right things in order to have success. I just like the mentality that he's going to bring. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot of experience that he can, be a leader for these young receivers and kind of show them the right habits, show them the things that he learned at Ohio State, while hopefully, creating a name for himself in the process and kind of living up to some of that initial recruiting hype that he had coming out of high school when he was a top 150 recruit. At running back, they bring over Lloyd Avant from Tulsa, Texas high school back, really productive guy. He had some decent offers coming out of high school and went to Tulsa, played as a true freshman. Not sure what happened there. Looking forward to talking to him at some point, but he comes over. To me, he's going to be that power back type role, third and short, maybe some goal line carries. I thought maybe that this was the year that Damian Henderson could break out in that role. He was never going to be the lead guy. I mean, Justin Marshall, Jalen Dupree, well established. Those are the top 2 backs, and they should be. But I think there's a role for a Lloyd Avant or potentially Van Shield, who rejoins the program after spending a season at Northern Colorado. Unfortunately, was injured after having some success early on in the season, if nothing else. Van's kind of a security blanket. He's solid in pass pro. You don't worry about him fumbling or stuff like that. He doesn't have the explosiveness of these other backs, but he's a proven commodity, familiarity within the system, and he's a guy that has stepped up when you've been in a bad spot before. And I think that carries a lot of trust within a coaching staff. Like, we've been able to depend on this guy when we had no other scholarship running backs, and he went out there and did his thing and played well against some pretty good defenses too. Like, think back to that UNLV game in Vegas. He had some big moments, and I'm excited to see him back on the roster. Tight end, with what you've had the last couple of years, it hasn't been great. I mean, Dallin Holker aside, I'm hoping that Rocky Beers can be a productive tight end for you. I think Jackson Warren's going to be the top guy, and we'll see in Carlos Anaya. I mean, he could be a bit of a diamond in the rough scenario. JUCO guy that went to Wofford for a year. Athletic, kind of has that Cole Turner body type, whereas Beers to me looks more like a Dallin Holker. But if you could have, Beers and Warren both, consistently producing, it's going to give you some flexibility in terms of the schemes that you can run. Norvell has been traditionally a guy that's willing to run 2 tight end sets. I know that's not really what you envision when you think of the air raid, but they've implemented some pro styles, some West Coast space concepts. And really, that I think that goes back to even like his time at Oklahoma. Like, he just has a background with those 2 tight end sets. And I think that'd be really big for CSU if that could be an element of their offense they can lean on more frequently and actually have success, actually attack the middle of the field, which they basically did none of this year. It reminded me so much of 2022. That really impacts the passing game, guys. Like, having that security blanket to, go up the seam or just sit underneath the sticks with, that's a quarterback's best friend. And I really do feel like that was a big loss and a big part of why CSU struggled to sustain drives with the same consistency that they did in 2023. They cut the turnovers way back, which was great, but they were also significantly less explosive. And outside of running the ball, they just had a hard time staying on the field. And even though they did run the ball well, it was weird. Like, they didn't move the sticks all that effective on third down at times. It's really a tough evaluation with that offense. You just know that you need more consistency. As far as O-linemen go, I was hoping they'd do a little bit more. It's really hard to sign quality offensive and defensive linemen in the portal. I know that. I thought they did a great job at the skill positions. I think in the secondary and linebacker, I love what they did. I like the guys they brought in the trenches. I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more depth added there, while admitting that I understand it's a hard thing to do. MJ Senegal, offensive tackle, comes over from Feather River Community College, along with William Wertman from Central Missouri. He's a highly successful D2 player, kind of has that Drew Moss background, 3 or 4 year starter, multi-time all-conference player. It wouldn't be surprising if he's your starting tackle, left or right. I think they'd like to keep Morley at guard. He's a guy that maybe you push him outside as well. I guess we'll see. But those are the 2 tackles they signed, as well as Walker Heimenbach, long snapper from Kentucky. Defensive line, you bring over Gabe Jones from New Mexico State. We had him on the pod. He talked a lot about how his relationship coach with Chuka Ndulu, the defensive line coach, is a big part of what convinced him to come here. I think he's got a high ceiling, maybe a diamond in the rough. You also sign, and we'll see if I can pronounce this, Moso Oipala Tutulele from New Mexico. He was their best defensive lineman, in my opinion, last year. A Cal transfer. I think he's quietly a very big addition, a legacy student as well. Dad played for the Rams under Sonny Lubick, so you love that. Colorado kid that originally went P4, decides to come home. Maybe he can be, this year's Gabe Kirschke, although obviously if he pops, you're hoping to hang on to him, because that can't be the recipe, is they come back, pop, and then we lose them again. The hope is that they stay. No ill will towards Kirschke or anything like that. I understand these kids are doing what they feel is best for their futures. But from a CSU standpoint, that's not the ideal scenario, obviously. Linebacker Jaquez Evans comes over from Baylor. He was a stud at Western Kentucky. He was going to be the 2023 preseason player of the year. Battled some injuries, has played very little football the last year and a half or so, but he has success in the system, has got familiarity with Summers, and he is a dominant pass rusher, which is frankly one of CSU's biggest needs, given you lost both Gatkuth and Boomjock and Kirschke, and then obviously that's 2 years removed from losing Mo Camara. So you've just lost a lot of pass rushing capability these last couple of winters, and a guy like Evans coming in and popping for a year would be huge. I'm hoping that Kennedy McDowell this year can kind of make a leap. He needs to put on some weight. He still looks too small to me, but we'll see. They also bring over Jacob Ellis and Robert Edmondson. Ellis, former JUCO National Defensive Player of the Year, JUCO All-American. Didn't quite pan out for him at Iowa State, but really productive player at a lower level. And even at Iowa State was a guy that they trusted to start about half the games. Maybe he's able to kind of find his footing and reach that ceiling that he showed at the JUCO level. Edmondson, I don't know a ton about, but I like what I see in the small sample size of film I've gotten to watch from him. Moves really well. He looks like one of those kind of jack of all trades. They've got him listed at linebacker, but I think you could also maybe put him in the slot or like at safety or a nickel, just kind of depending on how things pan out for him. He moves well. They bring over Jake Marlalowicz from Holy Cross. I'm not sure if I pronounced that one right. 4-year starter for them at safety. Gives me some Jack Howell vibes stylistically. He was ranked a 3-star recruit by 247. Probably one of your starting safeties, given that Jalen Gardner no longer listed on the roster. And then finally, we have the corners, who I'm really excited about. CJ Blocker, former 4-star prospect from Utah. Jahari Rogers, a 4-star prospect from SMU. Originally committed to Nevada, then flipped to CSU. So a little bit of extra salt in the wounds there. In Reno, they've got to have so much hate for the Rams by now, between everything that went down with like Norvell and the whole staff, and obviously all the transfers. And then last year, Owen Long was actually committed to Nevada. He was the last guy that CSU signed. The Rams flip him late. He ends up maybe being the best freshman signee from that class. Now this year, Carson Strong comes and joins CSU, and they flip what was supposed to be their 4-star signee. I don't think we're going to get a lot of Christmas cards from Nevada Wolfpack fans anytime soon. But both those guys, really high ceiling. They played a lot of football. Immediately come in and up the level of athleticism that you have in your secondary. They can really run. How they hold up in press coverage, we shall see. That's always the biggest question mark with these guys. you're a 4-star prospect because of how well you run. Can you actually cover? I've seen Blocker in a small stretch. I think he's got a good chance. And Rogers is a guy who's been productive at various stages in his career, so I'm encouraged. And Lamondre Joe, he's not as big of a name coming over from Missouri State, but I like him a lot. He reminds me a little bit of Dom Morris. He's undersized, but he's aggressive. He's got good ball skills. He doesn't get intimidated by bigger receivers, which you're going to need. So I'm encouraged by the transfer additions that they added this winter. I think the fact that you got 19 guys on campus for spring ball is great. Like, not only are you signing these transfers, but they're going to have an entire extra semester to get acclimated, to get comfortable within the system. It's just hard to hit the ground running when you get here in the summer. And so I think it's really huge that they got all these guys here this spring. It's a big year for the program. There's no question about that. I've said it a million times, but this past season needs to be the floor and not the ceiling. You got to build off of what you've established. I like some of the staff moves that have been made. I like some of the transfer additions that have been made. I have some questions about the trenches still, and I think we'll learn some answers in spring, just in terms of which young guys are they seemingly really going to trust to, make a big leap. Last year it was Morley. I know they're big on Ader Urian Baranchea. Like, maybe he's a guy that starts this year. Who's the other kid? Philip Ocon. Like, I really like some of these guys that they've signed the last couple of years, but they're young. They're young there. And so we shall see. All right, that's all I've got for you guys. I'll have post-game coverage, obviously, following the matchup against San Diego State. We'll have videos of players and MedVed and all that stuff you're used to. I'll have written content. I'll have an audio-only podcast that I record on Sunday, either Sunday morning or Sunday after the Super Bowl. But I've got so much love for everybody in Ram Nation. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us all morning. You guys are awesome. Always proud to be y'all. Much love. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.